A month had passed since Princess Lillian had left the kingdom. Standing beside the carriage, she looked at the bridge that led to an unknown place. A male servant, short-cropped and wearing a long cloak, expressed his willingness to support her, but also warned of the unknown of what awaited beyond the bridge. The princess felt lonely when she realized that all her servants who were with her had scattered. Her emotions, despite her determination, were filled with anxiety. The male servant put his hand to his heart and bid her farewell, leaving her alone. He said he would leave the princess at this point. Princess Lillian felt the last ties to her past life disappear. The funds for the trip had dried up, and she realized that she would have to manage on her own. The princess answered him in agreement, but her inner thoughts told her that she had many more difficulties to overcome. She set off, and fortunately the road passed without incident. However, there was tension and anticipation in her thoughts. Today was her wedding day, and despite all the hardships, she remained optimistic. She thanked the servant for traveling such a long way with her as the wind pulled off her hood, revealing her beautiful face adorned with a smile. The princess stood on the threshold of a new chapter of her life, despite all the uncertainties, with a sparkle in her eyes. Divine power is the power given to humans by the goddess Altmare. The first person to receive this power became king of his own country. Divine power was passed down from generation to generation. But Princess Lillian Gloriosa was deprived of this power. Prince Alexis stood in his magnificent palace, surrounded by merry ladies. One of them approached him with a question about the absence of the princess at social events. The prince explained that his sister had some problems, and it would not be right for her to attend the ball. This elicited a variety of reactions from those around him: sympathy, irony, and comments about royalty without divine power. Princess Lillian, who was standing to the side, began to wonder why her brother was organizing such events right in her own palace. Princess Lillian wondered if it was her palace. With the realization that she did not feel comfortable at this ball, Princess Lillian made the decision to return to her chambers, leaving the atmosphere of merriment. A princess born without divine power, Lillian Gloriosa. Lillian stands in front of the king, sitting on his throne. He began to speak, saying that he had finally arranged Lillian's wedding. Lillian bowed to the king, covering her eyes. The king went on to say that he had been choosing a candidate for a long time, and at last he had found one. He said that this candidate was called Archduke Seagram. Lillian was frightened, for she knew this man. The king told Lillian that as hard as it was, it would have to be faced. Lillian remembered that Seagram was a cursed land. Lillian walked to the gate and looked up at the sky. She wondered if she could find happiness with this man. Lillian remembered that Archduke Seagram was rumored to be an extremely capricious old man. Perhaps Seagram, like the princess, did not want this marriage and would throw her out at once. Lillian wondered what she would do if he did send her away. A young lad approached Princess Lillian and introduced himself, saying his name was Istin Seagram. Istin put his hand over his heart and added that he was the man who had been chosen as her groom. Lillian turned around, and surprise was inevitably expressed on her face. Her eyes widened, and her eyebrows rose in a sign of incomprehension. At that moment, she could not conceal the emotion that was stirring her soul. Seagram threw a warm cloak over the princess and continued, saying that he should have met her earlier, but unfortunately, he had not been informed of Lillian's arrival date. Seagram told the princess that he would now take her home. Princess Lillian entered the hospitable palace of Seagram, where the maids greeted her warmly and cordially. They quickly eased her from her cloak and expressed concern as to whether she was freezing in the cold. The princess smiled gratefully and accepted the offer of a cup of tea. Before going to bed, she approached Miss Furia, one of the maids, expressing her gratitude for the warm welcome. In a brief conversation, she shared her surprise and questions about the new place. Lying in bed, Princess Lillian again addressed Miss Furia, expressing her reflections and observations on this first day at Seagram. The maid, dissatisfied with her questions about the first night, steered her conversation in a more appropriate direction, suggesting that she discuss such matters with the Archduke. Leaving the princess's chambers, Miss Furia bid her good night, leaving her alone with thoughts of the new kingdom and the nearing future. Princess Lillian thought about the maid's words, for usually in such a situation one would put it before the fact and not discuss anything. Princess Lillian sits at the table across from Istin Seagram and drinks tea. The Archduke suggested that the princess look around. The girl was surprised at his words. Seagram said it would be best if the princess saw her own domain, but he added that he was not forcing her to do anything. Lillian asked Seagram if he minded if she went outside. The boy smiled and said he didn't mind, for it was now fully Lillian Gloriosa's property. Seagram added, saying that if the princess wished to go out without him, she would have an escort. Archduke Istin Seagram and Princess Lillian Gloriosa entered the market square. A commoner who noticed them expressed his surprise. At the same time, he could not help noticing Lillian's presence beside him. He said it was the first time he had seen this girl with the Archduke. He wondered if she might be Istin's betrothed. The man was told that the girl was rumored to be a princess. The vegetable merchant politely addressed Istin, greeting him with the words, "Sir." Then he asked the Archduke, with a small amount of mockery, if he had come here today only to show off his bride. In response, Istin, with quiet confidence, called him Charles, implying that it would be better if he were silent. The merchant went on to say that he understood everything. He just couldn't believe how fast time flew, because he remembered Istin from when he was still in diapers. It was hard not to notice the surprise on the princess's face. Lillian wondered why Istin spoke to everyone as an equal. The girl thought it was strange. The young woman apologized for being disrespectful and addressed the princess politely. She asked Lillian if she happened to be a member of House Gloriosa. In response, Lillian nodded. The woman rejoiced, for the people of the Gloriosa family had truly divine power. The woman continued. She said that it was rumored that this power could heal people. She asked Lillian to help their doctor and pointed to the girl standing next to her. Istin wanted to say something, but Lillian interrupted him and said that she couldn't help because she was born useless and unfortunately didn't have divine power. Lillian thought for a moment. Her words would definitely disappoint these people, so it was most likely that she would be chased away right now. The woman was surprised and said that Lillian would probably still have it. She added that in that case it was all right because they had lived without it before, and so they would continue to do so. Lillian was very surprised by her words. The maids greet the princess warmly and say they are happy to see her. Lillian thought about what was happening. She remembered that this place was called Dead Earth, but somehow being here she felt so alive. Lillian cries and asks Istin why he died. The doctor tells Lillian that he is sorry. The servants call out to Lillian many times, but she does not respond. Lillian ran to the Altmare temple and started screaming. She turned to the goddess Altmare, calling her stupid and asking why she was doing all this to her. Lillian continued. She asked Altmare why she didn't give her power and now also took away someone she loved so much. Lillian fell to her knees and began to sob. She asked Altmare to return Istin to her if she was a true goddess. The girl begged the goddess to grant her wish and soon fell asleep. The maids are walking through the courtyard carrying baskets of laundry. One of them said that the weather was surprisingly nice today and that the laundry would be dry in time. Suddenly, the maid asked her friend how the other princess was doing, but she said she didn't know, but she thought that Lillian was getting worse and worse every day. Lillian Gloriosa stands on the balcony, surrounded by a magnificent landscape that is bursting into vivid colors under the rays of the sun. The shining light creates a play of shadows and highlights on the green branches of the trees, and the air is filled with the scents of blooming flowers. The wind playing in her hair brings a refreshing coolness to this warm day. Lillian enjoys the moment when the rays of the sun gently embrace her, creating an atmosphere of peace and well-being. Lillian realized that to her surprise, Altmare had granted her wish, not a little differently than she had thought. The girl believes it is revenge for her blasphemy, for by opening her eyes, she has gone back 5 years before she met Istin. The princess believes she has returned to hell. Lillian Gloriosa, a princess, has traveled back in time 5 years. She is in a library trying to find something new. However, Lillian closes a book and realizes that she won't find anything here that she didn't know before. She doubts that the library contains special drug recipes or cures that did not exist in the future. Sensing time, Lillian lowers her head, closes her eyes, and begins to reflect. She decides that no matter what she has to go through, she will not let her husband, Istin Seagram, die a second time. Upon arriving at the doctor's office, Lillian hears about opercular syndrome. She admits that she has never heard of this condition and asks if it can be cured or prevented and what needs to be done for it. The doctor lowers his eyes and asks Lillian to calm down so they can talk. She begins to talk about the syndrome. Opercular syndrome is an incurable disease with severe pain and paralysis, and the outcome is always tragic. Lillian is frightened for Easton's life. She starts laughing, not believing in such a disease. She wants to object to the doctor, but the doctor interrupts her. Lillian claims that she doesn't understand what is happening and that they need to try again. She wonders why Easton is destined to die. Lillian suggests looking for another doctor. Looking up at the sky, Lillian remembers Easton and imagines him beside her. She asks him why he has a bad outcome if he looks completely healthy right now. She considers herself very happy with Easton and regrets that the happy times have passed so quickly. Lillian continues to talk to Easton in her head, saying that fate has smiled upon them and they can start over. They just have to wait until the day they first meet. She says that Easton's image doesn't leave her mind and she wants to see him right now. Remembering her brothers, Lillian frowned. She didn't think anything had changed, and they were still behaving as brazenly as ever in her palace. Suddenly, her brothers, second Prince Alexis and third Prince Felix, burst into the room. Lillian asks if they haven't learned to knock. Lillian's words were interrupted by Alexius. The prince asked Lillian what was the point of him stressing over a little thing like her. Felix repeated after him. Lillian frowned even more. Her brothers still annoyed her just as much. She decided that if she'd just be patient for a little while, they would go away. Lillian smiled and asked if she had any business with her. Alexius asked Lillian if he could have any business with someone like her. Lillian tries not to show emotion. Alexis said that he dragged Felix to Lillian because he was fed up with him. Felix asked Lillian if she was really getting married soon. Lillian was mildly surprised. Felix said he thought she hadn't been told anything yet. Lillian believes that this cannot be, as she was called defective goods, and broke off the engagement that had been planned since the day she was born. After that, she was found another fiancé and sent to Seagram. Lillian wondered how Easton Seagram was then. Felix smiled and said that in addition, he brought Lillian a gift and pointed to the maid who brought the scroll. Lillian hopes it's a joke or a clue from the goddess. The princess thinks that 5 years in such a horrible place would be worse than hell. The maid unrolled a scroll with a picture of a man in an unusual style on it. The maid began to read the text on the back of the scroll. She said his name was Max Saxony, 38 full years old. He lived across the sea in the kingdom of Ide, and if the wedding took place, Lillian would be his third wife. Lillian was very frightened. The news that she was going to be sent to whom she did not know and where made her heart slow down. She felt the fear enveloping her, the dark shadows of the unknown slowly looming over her future. Prince Alexius covered his face with his hand and called Lillian cheap. Then he laughed and apologized to Lillian, but he thought her father had done the right thing, for there was no point in keeping Lillian in their country, and at least they would get a few pennies for her. Lillian lowered her gaze. She read that there was really no point in her being in this country, and she absolutely had to return to Seagram to her happiness. Lillian stomped her foot, feeling the hard marble of the floor of her luxurious palace beneath her. Her gaze was determined, and in that moment she realized it was time to make a decision. Her heart beat harder, but she knew it was necessary to remain steadfast. She turned to Prince Alexis, asking him to leave her palace. Prince Alexis seemed taken aback by these words. There was a flicker of bewilderment in his eyes, and then some resentment. He had probably not expected such a turn of events from Lillian, who was usually polite and reserved. Alexis interrogated the princess. The girl thinks that there is no point in tolerating anymore. She exhaled heavily and repeated her words, asking Alexis right now to pack up and leave her palace. The girl decided to grow on herself. Lillian asked Alexis if he had forgotten how Alexis hides like a mouse during thunder. Lillian asked him to remember how he can't sleep without his nanny's skirt by his side. The girl asks if he remembered and continues that women can't stand men like him, and that if Alexi wants to get engaged to Lizzie, he should become more masculine. Lillian realizes that this information is from the future, but she doesn't care. Alexis blushed, realizing that his secrets had not gone unnoticed, and said that if anyone found out about it, he would kill Lillian. With those words, he quickly ran away, closing the door behind him. The girl is happy that she has sorted out one problem, and now what's left to deal with is the upcoming wedding. The girl said that her husband didn't look like a triangle, and then, without hesitation, she tore the portrait into small pieces, as if symbolically getting rid of the stereotypes and restrictions imposed by society and the expectations of others. Lillian felt her heart beating stronger from the release, from the fact that she was choosing to protect herself and not give in to external pressures. Felix smiled and told her not to worry because they had made a copy just in case and showed her another exact same portrait. Lillian turned around. She believes that if she does everything right, she will meet Easton in 5 years. Felix asked Lillian where she was going. The girl thought about the term and decided that she couldn't wait that long, and so she would find Easton herself. Stepping outside, Lillian spotted the priests of the large central temple. Her mind flashed back to their words about locking Princess Lillian in the West Tower, and she realized that the situation was getting more and more complicated. She quickly retreated behind a massive pillar to hide from their gaze. Hidden from view, Lillian began to think about what she should do next. The princess wondered what must have happened for these priests to come to them specifically. Felix said that apparently he had come. Lillian asked Felix in surprise if someone was supposed to come. Felix replied that a man from a cursed place called Seagram was supposed to come today, and his heir was supposed to arrive today. Lillian thinks that it simply can't be. The girl realized that the Seagram heir was Easton Seagram. Lillian decided to see if it was the real Easton and ran towards the priestesses escorting him. The priestess said that Lillian could not pass without special permission and asked her to go back inside. The girl looked at Seagram, but saw a cold, evil look. Not at all like the Easton Lillian knew. Princess Lillian asked Felix if he knew the reason for the Seagram heir's visit to their family, but he said he didn't know. A maid approached the princess and apologized for being uninvited. After a brief pause, she said that there couldn't be many reasons for high-ranking nobles to visit the main temple. It was either purification or blessing. The maid explained that the rituals are used to purify sins and receive blessings before an important event. Lillian objected, saying she knew what it was, but Seagrams hated that sort of thing. The maid continued. She says that each ritual costs a fortune, but for the sake of purification, you can splurge, especially if you remember how much money the Seagrams have now. It's nothing to them. Lillian wondered if Seagrams were always like this. At that moment, she was more interested in whether it was the real Easton, for it was dark and she could not see his face. The princess decided to make sure. However, she doesn't know how to do it. The girl began to think about her options. One of them would be a formal invitation to a tea party, but in her situation, it was almost impossible. Since unlike the other members of her family, Lillian has a small and unassuming palace and doesn't even have a maid. The maids are talking in the kitchen. One of them asks her friend if she has forgotten about the food for Her Highness. The other says she didn't think it was her responsibility. Lillian doesn't want Easton Seagram to see what a nightmare she's living in, and there's bound to be a scandal. Felix told his maid that he wanted to sleep. The maid suggested they go to Felix's palace. Then it hit Lillian, and she decided to come to Easton herself. The priestess told Princess Lillian that unfortunately she could not enter. Lillian was surprised and asked the priestess if the temple wasn't open to anyone who needed a god. The priestess agreed with her words, but added that God had turned his back on Lillian. The priestess said that preparations for their ritual were being intensified and that the god might be angry if Lillian appeared there. The princess began to calm herself, for she had heard those words many times since that day. Lillian remembers herself as a child. The priestess asked her not to worry, because the Gloriosa was a ritual that everyone went through. The priestess continued and told Lillian to dip her hands into the bowl in front of her. All those present waited expectantly, for they wondered what color the holy water would become. They remembered that the first princess had a dazzling golden color. But nothing happened that day, for Lillian was deprived of divine power. Lillian lowered her gaze, for she had not heard those words for a long time, and now she was back in the cruel reality. The priestess raised her hands and apologized to the Lord for her cruel words. Lillian laughed. She told the maids that they themselves had a watercolor a little brighter than clear, and that couldn't even be called a blessing. The priestess said that it was blasphemy, but in any case, they wouldn't let her pass until the ritual was over. The priests talk to each other. They think that things happen. But they couldn't even think that the second princess would personally come here. Besides, as soon as Lillian appeared here, a strange wind blew. The priestesses met a new visitor to the temple. They say that this girl has been visiting them often lately. The girl said that this is the most important thing in their family. The priestess said that she was glad that this girl came because the doors of the temple are always open to everyone. Lillian, covered in her cloak, paid attention to the words always and for all, and then sent the hell to these nuns who only lie, and went on her way. Lillian has no intention of stopping despite any punishments. Lillian is hiding from the nuns, for she wants to find Easton. Lillian wondered, after all, the temple was a place where a sinner could wash away his filth for a penny, but then why was she not allowed in? The boy noticed Lillian and asked his mom what was wrong with that girl, but what his mother told him to pretend he didn't see her and move on. Lillian tries to calm her heart, for she just wants to see if Easton is hers. Lillian thinks she knows Easton better than anyone. The princess doesn't know where exactly Easton Seagram is right now, but she knows that he is definitely somewhere in this temple, and so she is sure that she will find him. Lillian lowered the book covering her face. She realized that the venue is not here. However, there is a huge amount of books in this room, which means that Easton will definitely visit this room. The princess started reading the book. She's willing to wait in this room all day if it's the real Easton. The girl has started dreaming. She thinks that if all goes well, they will be together again. And when Easton will be returning to Seagram, Lillian plans to return with him. Then, the princess noticed that the book was over. Lillian started to look for the next volume, but realized that there was no continuation. Turning her head, she noticed Easton standing next to her. The girl was greatly surprised. Lillian is at a loss. There was no way she was prepared for this. The princess wants to squeal when she meets her beloved. Lillian wants to hear Easton's voice, but doesn't know what to ask, as nothing comes to her mind. Here, Lillian remembered a book she had read earlier and repeated the words of the main character, asking Easton if they had met before, took off her hood and smiled softly. The girl asked Easton that if there was a book he was looking for, if she could join him and help with the search, but Easton disagreed. Easton continued. He said that he didn't know Lillian, but he asked her not to talk to him even if they met in the future, because he was disgusted that Lillian pretended to know him. Lillian is very surprised and confused. Easton said goodbye to the girl, and she didn't quite understand what was going on. She didn't expect him to leave so abruptly. The princess is lying on her bed and hugging her pillow, thinking to herself that she thought that Easton would just fall in love with her at first sight. She imagined that everything would be different, and in the end, the guy did not even say hello to her. A picture pops into Lillian's mind of Easton calling her milady very politely and asking silently if he could recognize her name, and she would smile and say it. She wanted that, but got the wrong thing at all. The girl buries her head in her pillow. She doesn't like the fact that reality is very different from her fantasy. But the main thing that bothers her is that Liliana has never seen Easton so cold. He was always kind to everyone. But even so, Liliana still thinks he's a sweetheart. She thinks that he looks like an angry kitten and whether he really had such a character from early childhood. She wonders, and maybe it's all about puberty. The girl thinks about it and burrows even more into the pillow. The girl rises from the bed, saying that yesterday was just a bad day, but one day will not make her give up. And so she sits down at the table and decides to write out all the things that her beloved Easton loves. The princess thought about the question. What does Easton love? Most of all, she had an answer. Hers. Her body reacted to these thoughts, and tears began to flow down her cheeks as she realized the reality. She decides to write down her name first, then everything else. The next thing she thinks of is tea brought back from Aidenros. She also had a thought about classic literature and various classic books. And after that, she thought about the nanny and Easton's family members. She wants to meet everyone as soon as possible. And then she thought, logically, Easton should have at least a couple of attendants with him. But on the day they met, he was alone. At least it seemed that way to Liliana. Viria could hardly have left little Easton alone in a foreign kingdom. But then where was she? Liliana wondered even more deeply. She also wonders what palace Easton and his servants are staying in. She began to reassure herself, as she realizes that she still has a chance to meet and befriend him, and learn all the information firsthand. Liliana needs to introduce herself to him first, and then she'll act on the situation. Liliana went to the local library. She took one book in her hands, and then turned and saw Easton in front of her. The girl smiles and greets him, saying it's very unexpected. They met again. The guy looks at her a little distant, and then she decides to save the situation and says that it seems to her that Easton also likes to read, and asks if Easton has accidentally read the book she is holding in her hand, and adds that the author has a perfect understanding of the subject he is writing about. Liliana thought to herself that she wasn't an easy one, so she hoped his favorite book would help her out. The girl says that this book, then her monologue is interrupted by thoughts. She saw a page from the book and thought that the guy, even as a child, read such a book. But then she comes to her senses and continues talking. She reports slightly awkwardly now that this book looks quite interesting, and even from just looking at the book, that Liliana already liked it. But suddenly the girl notices with the corner of her eye a woman dressed as a priestess. This begins to worry her greatly, for if she is caught sneaking in here, she will fall greatly in the eyes of Easton. Lilian realizes that she needs to get out of here quickly, so she turns around and tells the guy that she needs to leave and will be back soon, but he still hasn't said a word. Lilian hid behind a shelf of books, hoping the woman wouldn't find her here. She was very annoyed and asked herself how much longer she would be interrupted. They're starting to work out. The girl fantasizes about Easton offering to read a book with her, and she's embarrassed, saying she's okay with it. The girl looks out of the bookshelves and notices that the woman has left, and she looks for Easton, but realizes that he has also left. The princess clenches her hand into a fist, but tries to calm herself down, saying in her mind, "It's okay, she'll be lucky next time." The next day they met again in the library. Lilian approached Easton. He mumbled that they had met today too. She apologized for leaving so abruptly yesterday. He said he didn't care. Afterward, Easton looked away and said that he had noticed that the girl was also interested in books. Lilian smiled broadly and said yes. She was very interested in reading, but the princess thought to herself that it wasn't really books that she liked. It was him. Lilian said that when you think about it, she hadn't really introduced herself, and she was about to say her name when she senses a woman dressed in a nun's uniform approaching her from behind, asking what Liliana is doing in this place. Anxiety looms over the girl at the sudden appearance of the woman. She continues to stand silently looking at her and Easton. However, she herself breaks the peace by moving away from the girl and approaching the boy. At this point, Lilian realizes that the woman is here because of the prince. A stern adult tells Easton that he shouldn't walk around the palace like that, and reprimands him because he decided to talk to Lilian. The girl bitterly accepts these words and feels bad for the prince, as he has just been humiliated. This humiliation is unacceptable to Lilian, as Easton is a prince and the sole heir of the Seagram family, and she believes that such an attitude is inappropriate for him. The woman calls Easton back to the dormitory. The boy sighs and his face changes. After looking at the book he had already prepared for Lilian, Easton puts it back on the shelf and carries out his instructions. The girl notices the guy's inner turmoil and realizes that he doesn't want to leave at all. However, the fact that he did not object to the woman in any way does not fit in her head. Easton's behavior seems very strange to her. She only realizes that the guy has some problems, but wants to know more about it. Lilian realizes that she can't do it by herself and decides to ask for help. However, the man who comes to her mind doesn't make her feel much like talking. Nevertheless, Lilian realizes that she has no choice. Lilian comes to visit and see Felix. She brings the boy a cake, but he doesn't like it and asks if she has a ylang-ylang cake. Lilian doesn't know what he's talking about, and Emma tells her that it's a pastry shop on the main street. Lilian promises to bring him a cake from the pastry shop next time, but she finds the boy's behavior mocking because she made the cake herself. In any case, the girl calls Emma for a conversation to fulfill the purpose of her visit. The princess says that she saw Easton walking with Felix and asks the girl to tell more about the guest. Emma turns a questioning look to Felix, who in turn says that she can tell everything if Lilian will take him butterflies and read him a story. This almost makes the princess mad, as she knows that Felix has brothers and a sister. But she manages to restrain herself and promises the child that she will read the story. Then, a happy Felix gives Emma permission to speak. Emma agrees and begins to narrate. She said that usually their aristocratic guests were lodged in the Vidar Palace, but Istin was not lodged there, but in an old dormitory. This information shocks Lillian. She remembers what Istin looked like all the times they saw each other and realizes that the guy was dressed as if he were a disciple of the high priest. She realizes that she didn't notice it only because the guy looks good in that outfit. Emma, however, says that there is more to it. The girl says that the servants who arrived with Easton were sent back after his arrival. None of those who accompanied Easton to the visit were left with him. After learning that Easton is all alone here, Lillian stops listening to Emma's story for a moment, feeling sympathy for the guy and realizing all the pain and loneliness that gnaws at him. But that's not all. Emma adds that Nanny Easton said she won't leave here until it's over. Lillian continues to listen in silence to everything Emma tells her. At the end of the story, the girl says that there are rumors that Easton is here to lift his curse. Emma warns Lillian to stay away from the boy. At that moment, little Felix runs up to Emma. He looks touched and cries. The boy throws himself into the girl's arms and asks her never to leave him. Emma promises to be there for him. They embrace in front of Lillian. Having recovered a little, Lillian is distracted from Emma and Felix's touching moment. The girl stares thoughtfully out the window. She has a hunch that Furia is here now, not far from the city. This is how the rest of the day goes. Before going to bed, Lillian ponders where Furia might be. She thinks that because of her character, Furia must have been staying somewhere near the palace. In the end, the princess concludes that Furia is in the shelter of the winds. According to the plan Lillian had devised, everything would go very easily. As a princess, she will invite Furia to the palace. Then, she will make sure that Istin and Furia meet. After all, Furia, as Lillian believes, is the one who Istin needs the most right now. Except that's when the girl notices a problem. She had never left the palace walls before. The only time it had ever happened was when Lillian was taken out of the palace in a carriage to be sent to Istin and Segram. But that doesn't stop the princess. She reassures herself by saying that there are good people living outside the palace. Then she begins to pack and get ready to go. The girl decides to take money with her as the most important means. Thoughts of leaving a note and bringing winter things with her quickly leave her. After some more time, Lillian manages to pack everything she needs into a katamka. She loads it on her shoulders, noting that the katam is quite heavy. Unable to bear the weight, Lillian falls and throws things around. She lies on the floor, hoping that someone will help her. But no one comes to help her, and Lillian lies like this until the next day. Then she decides to leave everything behind and sets off in the sunlight. The girl stops in front of the entrance. 2 knights stand on either side of the archway. Lillian repeats to herself that she has one last step to take. She gathers her resolve and begins to approach the exit. She still has her doubts. The courtyard is very large and guarded. Lillian begins to think that if she can't leave the palace, the guards will catch her and imprison her. But she remembers about Easton, and that she is doing all this for him. Standing in front of the guards, the girl tries to calm down, telling herself that there is no point in being afraid, because Easton is in trouble, and only she can help him. And only she could help him in a way that would not harm him, and would lighten his burden. Finally making up her mind, Lillian timidly takes the first step, then the second. With each new step, she gains more and more confidence, and finally she passes the Knights Guards and goes outside the palace. No one even tries to stop her, and this fact surprises the princess. She notes that she managed to leave the castle too easily, and this despite the fact that she has been playing the role of an obedient toy for quite some time. She even thinks about running away and starting a new life, since no one will come looking for her. However, Lillian remembers the purpose of her adventure and discards thoughts of escape. The loneliness with which Easton lives in the castle becomes more and more vivid in her imagination, and she promises herself that she will bring Farina to the castle. Some time has passed. It is starting to get dusk outside. Lillian is in the city. It is a bustling place with lots of houses and people of all ages, from small children to adults and even old elderly residents. The crowdedness of the city does not go unnoticed by the girl. Lillian even thinks that there are too many people here. But her mood lifts slightly when she notices that this place is much like Seagram. Finally, she finds the shelter of the winds. Inside, the place is crowded, with tables and benches set up and food and drink being handed out. Lillian realizes that the shelter is a combination tavern and hotel. The room is much larger than the princess expected, which complicates her search for Firia. Lillian is about to ask the tavern owner about Firia, but she is interrupted by the clatter of a glass on the table. The sound comes from behind the princess. Lillian turns around to see who just banged on the table. There is a woman sitting at the table. She is dissatisfied with the inhabitants of the kingdom and their arrogance, because they all think that outside the kingdom there are only villages. The woman confidently says that Seagram is not a village and suggests that all the visitors get drunk. When Lillian sees the woman's face, she is surprised to see that she is Firia. Lillian's surprise comes from the fact that when she saw Firia, she remembered her as a sweet woman with flowers, not the drunk and rude woman she sees in front of her now. The patrons begin to spin Firia into a toast. Lillian doesn't want that, because then the woman would lose control, and she needs her today. Lillian cuts off the calls of the shelter guests and strikes up a conversation with Firia. Lillian deceives the woman and says that she is the princess's maid, asking Firia to work with her in the palace. Firia interrogates the girl and childishly says that in that case she is the second princess, then drinks her glass. Firia says that she doesn't believe the girl, saying that it's all a fairy tale that no one will fall for, and then offers the girl a seat at the table. But Lillian gets straight to the point and tells Firia that she can arrange a meeting with Istin. The news about Istin surprises Firia so much that she forgets about the drink and asks her to take her to Istin as soon as possible, even offering her money and jewelry. Lillian tries to calm the woman down, but she moves on to another topic and asks about Istin. Firia asks what the boy's favorite dessert and fruit is. The princess says that Istin likes chocolate tart and peaches. Firia asks a follow-up question, Istin's favorite book. Lillian replies that it's a series of books called After the Rebirth, I Was Chosen by the Goddess. Firia nods approvingly, saying that the check is complete. At the table, the woman marvels that the boy has managed to make such a loyal friend as Lillian. Firia still has doubts, because last time she was kicked out of the castle, and now Lillian may be in trouble. But the girl tells her not to worry and promises to do everything to make sure that Firia and Istin meet each other. Firia thanks the girl for her help and asks her to leave now. However, when the woman gets up from the table, the drink makes its effect and her legs shake. Lillian realizes that the two of them will not make it to the castle in such a state. Realizing that they won't start looking for her even tomorrow, Princess Lillian finds out from Firia if she has taken a room in the tavern and asks her to start her journey tomorrow. Firia looks up and tells the girl that she has something to tell her before they set off. Lillian asks if it concerns Istin. Firia nods and says she'll tell her when they leave the tavern. The information she's about to share can't be divulged to anyone after all. Firia decides to confide in Lillian because she is sure that the girl sincerely wants to help. They find a secluded place, and Firia starts by asking the girl if she knows why everyone avoids Seagram. Lillian nods affirmatively. She knows, though, that when she was first told about Seagram, the story was a beautiful one. The girl thinks back to the time she heard the story. It was exactly the time when she was everyone's favorite. The maids worried about her and tried to warn her about dangerous places. Her mother was with her then. Lillian remembers finding a book about Seagram and asking her mother to read it to her. She recalls a story. Once upon a time, there was a kingdom blessed by a goddess. This kingdom had fertile lands. However, despite the goddess's protection, someone was encroaching on its lands. Demons who lived at the edge of the world. Demons attacked the kingdom, and a long and terrible war between them and humans ensued. People fought with their own strength, but there were not enough resources. They tried to get help from the goddess, but no one answered their prayers. The kingdom was on the verge of destruction, but it was a demon princess who came to the rescue. She betrayed her people because she fell in love with a human. With her help, the humans won. In gratitude, the emperor gave her the land, and the princess called herself a human. She ended her long life in joy and gratitude. That was the story Liliana heard from her mother. She asked her mother if it was true that Seagram existed, but her mother told her to keep it a secret, to keep it in the past. However, in Lillian's opinion, the reality was different. The clerics of the temple were ashamed of the past, in which they had to borrow powers from demons. In addition, they felt threatened when children with mysterious powers began to be born in Seagram. This power began to be called witchcraft, and later it was all called one big sect. Seagram was hated, and soon it closed itself off from the world. After that, Seagram became a cursed land ruled by a witch. The goddess hated the city she had once created. Furia says it's rumored that everyone born in Seagram is cursed, but she says that's not true. The princess says she believes her. She realizes that the temple is to blame for all these rumors about the city. Furia confirms this, but then starts talking about Isten. Lillian snaps out of her seat, asking if Easton is all right. Furia looks away, saying she's not the right person to say that, and asks to hear from Prince Easton in person. As night falls, Lillian reflects on Furia's words. She realizes that it is really better for her to hear everything from Easton, but the mystery of what happened to Easton does not give her peace, Lillian cries. Then she realizes her mom's story is true, but she remembers what Emma said about the curse of Easton. She's never heard of it before and suspects that something might have gone wrong after her return to the past. She goes to the window and asks to see Easton as soon as possible. Night turns to day. Furia wakes up and sees Lillian dressed. She asks if the girl has slept, but hears back that she has to get ready for the long journey ahead. Furia leaves the room and says she will call the coachman. The news that it was possible to take a carriage upsets Lillian. The girl and Furia get into the carriage and drive to the castle. Finally, the carriage arrives at the castle. Lillian is waiting to see Easton. She and Furia go to the entrance, but the guards block their passage. But they are told that there is no way in without a pass. Lillian asked what kind of pass, and the officers said they needed either permission to enter or a document authorizing them to enter, and there was an awkward pause. Lillian closed her eyes, feeling her mistake. After all, she had never been outside and didn't even know what permission was needed. And then she caught on to their word, commoners, and thought that she would understand if she were in another country. But here, wouldn't they recognize her? After thinking about it, the girl calls the guys and says that they didn't even recognize who she was and immediately blocked the road. The officers began to feel uncomfortable, as here a certain guy saves the situation. Alexis said that everything is normal, and they are just doing their job, and in fact, ordinary mortals are forbidden to enter here. After these words, the girl realized why they were not let in. After a short pause, Liliana mumbled for them to listen to her, and then introduced herself, explaining that she was the second princess and wanted to go to her home, and added that this time she was asking them since they were following the orders of the stupid second prince. The boy heard this and shouted, saying that if they let her pass, they should wait for punishment, but the girl said that she was giving them a last chance, and the officers were more inclined to obey the princess. When suddenly, Liliana heard a woman's voice, she realized that it was Queen Priscilla, a beautiful lady dressed in an incredibly lush red dress, her body adorned with various decorations. Priscilla Margaret Glorious is known for her nobility and honor, trained in the finest institution. She was born to become queen, mother of the third Prince Felix, the first prince and princess, the noblest woman in their country, and now she is going straight to Liliana along with her maids. The queen asks the ones they have set up here, and after a short pause, asked them if she would have to ask twice. She turned to the second prince, who excused himself by saying that Lillian had gone outside the castle yesterday without telling anyone, and now she had brought a suspicious woman with her. Lillian denies all these words about the woman, explaining that this is not some suspicious woman, but her future maid. The queen said she knew her, which surprised Liliana. And after this little conversation, Priscilla turned away from the princess and said that that was the end of it, and she had to go away. The first princess, Estella, comes up to them and says that it looks like a childish quarrel, and asks the queen not to worry as she will sort it all out. The prince is surprised to see his sister now, but the princess thought maybe she could help her. Estella asks Liliana if she received an invitation to the tea party, and the girl hesitantly says she did. But Princess Estella says she didn't send it because she doesn't have time for it. The girl is apparently concerned about that. Liliana said she'd thought about it too, but she didn't have anyone to ask, whereas the invitation could have been real. And if she hadn't come, she would have hurt Estella. Estella called her maid and asked Marie to find out who sent the invitation. Most likely it was Alexis. But how could he use his own sister's name? It was beneath him. The maid said she would find out who sent the invitation. Afterward, Estella adds that she should also bring sweets for Liliana. Liliana says that Estella is probably busy right now, and that's why she can do something. She didn't have time to say anything, as Princess Estella interrupted her and said that everything is fine and don't let the girl worry, as she has a lot of free time on her hands. Princess Estella asks Marie to wait a little longer and asks her to bring more dresses for Princess Lillian that will fit her in size. Lillian is asked how she got to such a point, wearing such a horrible dress in the palace, because they don't even drink tea in such a dress. And the girl thinks to herself that of course she is pleased with her sister's care, but she is wearing her best and most expensive dress, and Lillian thinks that she will not send Furia away just like that. After some time has passed, Estella is approached by a woman who asks her if she is going to see her son, and if so, why spoil such a beautiful day, and adds that she will be waiting for Estella at the palace. Estella tells everyone that it's time to start their conversation. First, she addresses the officers saying that no matter how stupid her brother was, he overreacted. She also said that since they are engaged in security, they should approach it wisely, and if such a thing happens again, they will not do it with simple words anymore, and they just agreed with her words. After the princess turns to Alexis and asked him if he still hasn't learned to think, these words made the guy's face sweat and he felt more awkward. And after Estella turned to Liliana, said that lately there were strange rumors about her, and asked her what the hell the girl was doing. Liliana didn't understand at first, but as she began to understand, she began to feel more insecure and even confused. She tried to hide it, but the sweat on her face showed it all. Liliana asked Princess Estella what she meant by rumors, and she heard that Princess Estella had heard that Liliana had been leaving her palace a lot lately, and this situation only confirms the rumors. Liliana realized that it was about rumors from her palace, and she thought that no one cared whatever happened. But it turned out that they were just following Princess Liliana. Princess Estella said it will be hard, but while everyone is busy with the ritual, let her refrain from actions that may attract attention. The girl asked Liliana, and when the situation gets better in time, Estella will help her to return to the high society. Then she said that now it is time for her to leave and told Alexis to leave too, and he obediently follows her instructions. Princess Liliana thinks to herself that her sister is wrong. As things will only get worse as time goes on, they will be locked up. Furia looks out the window and sees the palace of the second princess, only she notices that it is too far away from everyone, and it is obvious that it is in a poor state. There are no servants to greet her, and what happened on the street? The girl is worried about her mistress. As Princess Liliana is seen here, fully intact and with a smile on her face, she says that she must have kept her future maid waiting for a long time. Furia bows to the princess and says she didn't wait long, and then apologizes for her past disrespect to the princess. There was a short pause, after which Liliana said that everything was fine because she was guilty of lying about her identity, and added that Furia must have many questions for her. The girl dared to say that she thought that the girl would be at a disadvantage when she was in the palace, and then asked her what was the real reason for helping her. Even though Liliana said she was friends with Isten, still her motives for helping are unclear to Furia. Liliana thinks about how to tell the maid everything correctly. She can say that she wants to raise Isten and remarry him, but she worries whether the girl will understand her or not, although she understands Furia's worries. Liliana lowered her gaze and embarrassedly said that she was actually in love with Isten, and it was probably love at first sight. These words shocked Furia very much. The girl said that she realized it recently. Not so long ago, she was walking in the garden, looking at the flowers, the beautiful weather around, for a moment immersed in her own cozy world. She took the butterfly in her hands, as suddenly her attention shifted to one guy. she began to wonder who he was. It seemed to her as if she were destined to see Easton walking past the garden, as if fate itself had brought them together. She told it to the maid, and the girl began to glow with delight at the story of falling in love. She said it was a beautiful story. After she asks Firia to listen carefully and starts her story, she informs that the main temple is not an ordinary place. Many people come there for divine help. There was a nobleman who tried to cure an unexplained illness. It was acne. There was a princess who is bedridden due to an unexplained illness. She was dumped by her fiancé. They all stay at Vidar Palace, but it is blasphemy to send Istin to the dormitory where the youngest priests live. On this, Firia fully agrees with her princess. Liliana explains that she wants to get Istin moved to the main palace, where all the aristocrats stay, but as the maid has already seen, she is not very welcome here, and therefore needs her help. Firia agrees and says that of course she is willing to help the princess and will do her best. Liliana said that if that was the case, then she should first find out what Easton was sick of and why he had come here in the first place. Now she sees that Easton's character has changed, and until she wins his heart completely, she won't know if he was like this before. She also adds that in order to be prepared, we must first find out how and why he was here, and after a moment, the girls decided that it was time to begin. At the main temple, they're walking through the building now. One of the guys says it's quiet here too, so they should go back. But suddenly, they noticed the room and wondered about the guest inside, if he had been treated today too, while the other guy asked how such a thing was possible and if he was not an aristocrat. One of the guys said to go on, as they had been ordered not to touch him, even if he started to scream. The second one wanted to object, but was interrupted by the first one, who said that there was no reason to worry, as even if the guy died, they would not be punished for it. Firia remembers it was an ordinary day at Seagram. She brought tea to her master. The boy closed the book and thanked the maid, then looked away from the cookies and asked about them. Firia said that she had tried her best today, and that's why the cookies were a bit spicy. She asked the guy to taste the cookies and give his opinion on them, and he said that he needed to prepare himself first. Easton was about to take a bite of cookie when here a maid peeks out from behind the door and asks Firia to go to the kitchen because they are waiting for her there. Firia looked towards her master, who was washing down the cookies with warm tea, and apologized, saying that she had to leave for a while. But after only a few seconds, she turned toward Easton and saw the guy bleeding from his hand and mouth. She knows it wasn't poisoning. It might have been a psychological problem, but that's also unlikely. They couldn't see any abnormalities in the guy, and they couldn't diagnose him. Easton woke up in his bed and mumbled that he was fine, and asked everyone to stop making a fuss. The boy asked Firia not to even think about writing a letter to his father about what had happened. A few days later, Firia went to the Lord's room and told him that the teacher was coming to see him soon, but she didn't hear anything back, and thought maybe the boy had gone away for a while. But the girl decided to enter the room to check if her master was here, and as soon as she entered, she was horrified at what she saw. Easton was lying unconscious on the floor. The guy was lying there bleeding all over. He was just in a pitiful state. And that's when Firia realized it was a mistake to turn a blind eye to it. The maids are discussing among themselves that the doctor said that the gentleman is completely healthy, while the second maid asks if the girl knows that a priest will soon arrive to cure their gentleman. After a while, a priest arrived, but even he can't tell the exact causes of the disease. But perhaps he just lacks knowledge, as he is a priest of the lowest rank. In his opinion, only divine power will help, which will be able to displace what is hidden inside of him. And if the seizures increase, it's the only escape from the curse. Firia asked what the curse was. While the priest said that people were talking about curses a lot lately, the Seagram curse was something incurable and mysterious. That's all the priest had heard. The priest and Firia approached Easton, who had already regained consciousness, and he refused, explaining that he thought all clerics were frauds. But the priest denied it and said that not everyone was like that, and that the boy should not judge a book by its cover. The guy said not to let the priest think anything unnecessary. He's grateful to him, but for the moment, he doesn't want to add fuel to the fire of an already difficult situation. The priest was led away. Easton then asks if the priest has left, to which the maid replies with a positive yes. Suddenly, Easton held out his hand to his maid and asked her to look at his hand. She looked at it and was horrified. Snake scales began to appear on his hand. It scared the maid very much. She had never seen anything like it before. The guy said he didn't know what it was and added that in time the seizures ended and it also went away. But when they started, it continued to cover his whole body, and it was possible that it was a curse. The maid says she is obliged to send the letter and adds that purification in the main temple should help him. But he firmly answers no and asks not to do it for the time being. But when he gets worse, he can go to his father. But now there is no need. Easton says he'll wait for the rumors to completely die down, but in the meantime, he'll be patient until people's attention is focused on something else. When things had more or less calmed down, Furia tells Liliana. Then they went to the main temple for help, and although they had made a huge donation, they were told that because of the large influx of people, there was no place to house Eastern, so only Liliana could help. The girl realized that now that she was back in the past, something had changed and gone wrong. Only if she had divine power she could save Isten. Liliana wonders why the goddess is doing this to her, what she did wrong. But then he calms down, telling himself that everything will be all right, and that without this stupid power, Isten will live. Whether it's a curse or a disease, the girl doesn't care. Whatever it is, she will still find a way to save her lover. Liliana firmly and decisively says yes. But for Furia, it's not clear what it means, and that's why she asks questions. It was morning. The maid asked Princess Liliana how she would like to decorate her hair and suggested a flower or a ribbon. And then Liliana began to talk about how she would like to look now, and later added that now she had to meet with Isten. Meanwhile, in the main temple, a guy with short red hair comes closer and closer to the door as he suddenly looks back and sees that behind her is a beautiful girl with long hair, dressed in black and white clothes. She asks the red-haired man what he is doing here, and the red-haired guy says that it seems to him that no one enters there today, and that's why he decided to check. He was asked if Seagram was lying there, and he nods his head affirmatively. He was told that maybe there was no one else there, and he just asked not to scare him and said that it was time to open the door. They go into the room to see if anyone is alive, and they see Easton lying on the bed, an unconscious guy with blood dripping from his mouth, dripping down, staining the entire sheet. They are scared and yell at him to wake up. They were frightened by what they saw, and in their minds there was only one question. What about the guy? Maybe he died. The red-haired guy has noticed that he is still breathing and needs to be helped urgently, while the other denies Maul first to help you need to get a special permit. In response, the guy shouted for her to move away because they don't have time for any invitation, so he has to help the guy himself. He uses magic to save Isten. Somewhere two priests are talking to each other. One of them asks if the child was saved and learns that yes, and that they are watching him now. She says it is good, because they do not benefit from the death of this child at all. Furia and Liliana went to the temple, but they were met by the priestesses, who said that unfortunately they would not be able to enter the temple today, and the girls crossed their arms on their chests. And also Princess Liliana was told that the man next to her definitely shouldn't be there. Liliana smiled and said that she had no divine power, but she still had the title of princess, and the priestesses should not forget it. And the priestess said that the girl was right. Princess Liliana also added to the dialogue that she did not come to them, but to Isten Seagram, who is staying here. She wants to officially meet him as a princess, and today is the day when the most important festival is to be held in the temple, and she came, and if they want to see her in anger, they can continue to block the way. The priestesses apologized and asked the princess to give them a few minutes to talk it over. Liliana apologizes to Estella to herself, even though she had asked to lay low, but the priests were the first to begin. The priestess turned to Princess Liliana and informed her that Isten had actually had a seizure this morning and was recovering now. These words made Liliana very tense. She became very worried about her lover's condition. She was told that it was true and was lucky that their priest was there to help him, Priest John. The priest John comes out to them, introduces himself, and says he's been asked to look after Easton, and adds that the guy's feeling better and sleeping because he's just been checking on him. The priestess continued, saying that Easton was best not to be disturbed right now while the recovery was underway, and to let them come back next time. That was the end of their conversation. John is very worried about whether he said everything right or wrong. He didn't say anything wrong. And most importantly, he didn't say too much. At least he hopes so. He is very hard on the situation. Suddenly, someone quietly and stealthily crept up to him from behind and grabbed his mouth with the palm of his hand so that the guy could not scream. And then he lost consciousness. John opened his eyes and saw trees in front of him. He realized that he was probably in the western forest. He wondered how he could have ended up here, when suddenly he heard a familiar voice. He sees the familiar silhouettes of Liliana and Furia in front of him. The princess holds her finger to her mouth, telling the boy to be quiet and saying if he starts yelling, she will punish him for it. The guy thought to himself that he was told they were good people, but he said out loud that he would be quiet and even quieter than the grass. Time passed. The guy told the whole story and that he became responsible for Istin. While kneeling in front of the girls, Liliana shouted with anger, saying that she knew that nobody cares about Istin and nobody cures him, but only maims him, while Furia said how bad they were. But John asked the girls to spare him and justified himself by saying that they were really busy preparing for the festival. Furia turns to the princess and asks her what this festival is, since she has never heard of it before. The girl said that it is a flower festival. It is organized by the saint once a year. She uses divine powers to bloom many flowers in an instant. At the festival, all the common people gather, and after the flowers and food are filled with the power of the saint and given away. You could say it's all about showing everyone your power, and there's nothing else special about it, just showing off. They choose one aristocrat who donated the most money, and he is given the opportunity to put flowers on the altar. So you can get more blessings and, of course, flowers and food too. After her phrases, John realized that it was all for money only. This fear was confirmed. He was told that they know how to make money, and he said that it is a complete horror and cannot be so bad that everything is so bad. Liliana says that even though it's disgusting, but now it's to their advantage, because at the festival, they can get something that is not normally sold, namely a holy object with divine power, and only on the day of the festival it can be legally obtained. Princess Liliana turned to the boy and asked him if his name was John, and he said it was John. The princess smiled and said that she had one request for the guy, and it was very simple. These words surprised John a lot, but he began to listen attentively. 1. The princess hopes that John will keep reporting on Isten's condition, and 2. That he will arrange a chance meeting between the girl and Isten. The guy asked what casual meant, and Liliana explained that it was like a sign of fate that brings lovers together, adding that she thought everyone dreamed of such a thing. After the girl said that if the guy will help her now, she will thank him. She knows that he will probably need her help in the future, and then asked if John agreed. It is a good offer. In the end, John agreed with the terms of the princess. Night has fallen. Temple dormitory. Isten came to his senses and told John that he had been informed that he had saved him, so he wanted to thank him personally, and the boy felt a little awkward. He said that he should not be thanked. It was just his job, especially since he was assigned to John. He said that he is still young, but he will do his best. He also said that there is something else. He said that he saw Isten's nanny Furia in the castle today. This surprised Isten very much, as he doesn't know what the girl is doing in the castle at such a time as this. At the same time in Lillian's palace, the girl thought about the fact that if it wasn't for John, then they might not have gotten anywhere. And maybe they didn't have as much time left as she thought they did. She has nothing left now, but Estella would have done well. But Liliana has no money or divine power, which makes her lie down, leaning on the table, hiding her head behind her hands and feeling sad. But after a few seconds, she calms herself down. She raises her head and her gaze, saying that it's not time to whine. She needs to act. Furia is near her, so she can meet with Isten under the pretext of their reunion. But first, she needs to prepare and officially invite him. She doesn't want Isten to see her like this, but there is no turning back. Anyway, she had nothing in their first meeting either. They met at the worst times, but he still loved her, so she has nothing to be ashamed of. Suddenly, her thoughts were interrupted by Furia, who entered the room and asked if the princess was awake. And she said she was not, but it was time to go to the meeting with Isten tomorrow. Firia pulls out a box of jewelry, which the princess remembers very clearly, and asks Liliana if she wants to try on a piece of jewelry, and the princess asks why she needs it. Firia explained that while she was cleaning up, she thought that this jewelry would be suitable for a princess, and she was also a real princess, so she should look like one. Liliana thought to herself that they were real jewelry and thanked Firia profusely. John continued to tell Istin that he had indeed seen Firia in the rose garden, but added that that was not all. He said that if the boy went there at the same time tomorrow, he could meet his nurse. He thought that if John was so clear about what he was saying, it was probably someone's plan. But even so, the guy decided to still check it out in person. He went to the rose garden at the same time, and indeed met Firia there. She saw the guy and started running up to him, mumbled that she didn't think the gentleman would actually come, and asked how the guy was feeling. John said that he was fine, and asked how she had managed to get back, and then noticed Fury's outfit. The maid said that she could not leave Isten alone here, so she wandered around the street for a long time and met a girl by chance who offered to help her. The girl cried and started wiping her tears, saying that she immediately wanted to meet him, and the guy asked if someone helped her and asked Firia not to cry. Firia said she had help and would introduce them, as here, quite by chance, Liliana walks up to them and asks Firia if something is wrong with her. John was very surprised to see Princess Liliana here. He didn't expect to meet this girl here, and he didn't know that she knew Furious. The only thing he remembered was how he had met this girl in the library a few times, and how she tried to talk to him. During their meeting in the library, the guy even became more active in their conversation. Only then the girl got distracted, and he had to go away. The guy looked at the girl carefully, and she said she was glad to welcome him and introduced herself, saying she was the second Princess Lilian Gloriosa. John was very much surprised. As soon as he learned that she was a princess, he put his hand on his chest and apologized to the girl for the rudeness he had shown earlier out of ignorance. The lad then kneels down, showing as much respect as possible to the princess, and introduces himself. He informs her that his name is John Seagram. The girl is happy as she has succeeded. She smiles broadly and tells him not to worry about it. She didn't know he was from Seagram family either, and the guy thanked her for her mercy. The girl is in despair. She thinks why now everything has gone wrong. Supposedly, he should now overwhelm her with compliments. But after a few seconds, she realized that everything is still right, because her man is not so easy to hunt down. The girl said that John was good, but he didn't understand why it was said at all. And she took over the theme, saying that everything was fine, and she just thought about it. Liliana said that they had reached the garden and suggested to Istin that they go for a walk together. He said that he did not mind, and on the way, Princess Liliana told Istin the story of how she had met Firia. The boy thanked the girl. He thought to himself that he didn't even think Firia would stay. And then he looked back and wondered why she was following them, while Firia wished Liliana luck with all her soul. Liliana says that he doesn't have many people on the street, and John replies that the girl is right, because it's different for them, but not always. It's just that it's the height of the festival now. Princess Liliana thought about it. She thought that it wouldn't be a big deal if she told him now, and tried to arrange the next meeting. The girl looked at Istin, said his name, and asked the guy if he would like to go to the flower festival with her. The guy was very surprised at her words and asked her again, as suddenly the princess started to justify herself, saying that it was all Firia. She was interested in the festival and really wanted Liliana to show it to her. John said he would think about it and thanked her for such a wonderful offer, while Liliana wondered if it was a refusal or not. Princess Liliana apologized and asked John not to rush into a response just yet, while too many extra eyes were on them. Liliana asks if they should change the place where they are staying. She says that her palace is not that far away. She hasn't been walking like this for a long time, and so she thinks it's a good time to take a break.